Hello, world, and welcome back to this delightfully taboo channel. My name's Sarah, and today I'm here with a very good friend of mine and someone we can all thank for me presenting myself in video format. She is a friend, a sister, a colleague, and someone that I'm very grateful to have in my life. She's also what we call a projector in human design. And so my friend Tan is here to join me. I want to talk to Tan about something that's very deep, very personal, and I want to thank her for sharing with us some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. And I also want to apologize for the nasally sound of my voice because I'm just recovering from a cold. Uh, Without further ado, thank you, Tan.
Hey, Sarah. Thank you for having me here today. So, yeah, I'm also really grateful to be having you in my life. Just the same. I'm really glad that our paths have crossed um, and that you've become like a soul sister to me in some ways, and that we can be there for each other and share um, things with each other that maybe it's hard to share with some other people in our life, and that we can kind of go deep together. So, yeah, I'm very grateful for being here and for talking to your community about the taboo topic that we'll be discussing today.
Yeah, so as we do on this channel, we're talking about something very taboo. And being that it is the time of the year when we are going into the dark half, and as we do go inward, sometimes it does get dark because we're facing our own shadows. We're often doing it by ourselves, and the light is just dimmer. So, what we're going to be talking about today is when I met Tan, or when Tan and I first, our paths first crossed, and the passing of Tan's father. And so, because that turns out to be very relevant for the time that we met. And so, do you want to start us off, Tan, with what was going on during that time of your life when you put out the call for applications to Tan Astrology, and what your relationship was like with your father during that time?
I thought it was really interesting that you're asking this question, and I don't know if there's like a relationship there between me hiring for Tan Astrology and the passing away of my dad, but I suppose there could be something that's like a little bit more subconscious there that maybe I can't quite grasp yet, but who knows? Maybe our talk today will kind of unveil that for us. But yeah, my dad passed away February 26th of 2022. And I was putting out, I think, an announcement that I was hiring astrologers to work with me on Tan Astrology. I think in February, the beginning of February of 2022. And then my dad passed February 26th. But I think that I scheduled some interviews with you and with some other astrologers, I guess mid-February or something like that. Um, and the interesting thing was that the interview that I was scheduling with Adriana was actually on February 26th. So it's actually the day that my dad passed away, and it was really, I would think it was something special because I came on the Zoom and I was waiting for her for 15 minutes and she didn't come on. And then I just got off and I sent her an email. I said, you didn't come on and stuff like that. And she sent me an email back and said, I was there, but you didn't let me into the room. So I was like, there was like this almost like a Mercury retrograde situation happening where we kind of missed each other. But then I think a few minutes after like sending her this email, I got a call from my sister. She video called me from Thailand because I live in Amsterdam. At that time, it was another city in the Netherlands, and my dad was in Thailand in Bangkok, and my sister was there. My mom was there in Bangkok, and my sister called me to say that dad's sort of passing. So it's the line's not always clear when somebody's passing. It's kind of like he's getting there and he's about to pass, or maybe he's already passed. So maybe you should be here with him on the last minutes. So then she called me in a video call, and that was when he passed away. And I just thought that was, really, really strange because if Adriana and I was in that interview, if we didn't miss each other, then somehow I might have missed that call that my sister was going to call me to be at that moment when my dad crosses over. but somehow it happened in this way. And Adrian and I did talk about this, and we thought it was a really, yeah, sort of destined maybe situation in some ways. But yeah, you asked a little bit about my relationship with my dad. And so I think, yeah, at that time I spent January of 2022, so like the whole month with him in Bangkok, because we kind of knew that he probably wasn't going to have many months left. We didn't think it was going to be that fast. Sorry, I think I'm blurring. So I was glad that I went there and spent that month with him. But at the same time, he was very sick. He was diagnosed with liver cancer. So it was the last stage of the cancer at that time. And it had basically spread to his lungs, his spine, and various other organs. And so he was basically taking morphine every day so that he wouldn't feel any of the pain. And when I was back there for that month in January, I was sort of like the caretaker for him, along with my mom, because my mom is doing a lot. She's always there with him. So, me being there for a month was like, I could help out a little bit. So I don't know how to say like what was our relationship. It was like a caretaker and a sick patient kind of relationship. But I think that it was also a goodbye moment. Somehow, deep inside, we knew that it was gonna be a goodbye moment as well. Yeah.
Oh, I just like the sinking feeling that I feel in my heart whenever, yeah, you're talking about it. It's especially when it happens that way, when you see your family members vulnerable and in that position where you can't do anything but help. Yeah. So, um, so yeah, this event with your father passing over, it actually occurred and kind of disrupted that search for a team then, from what I
Mm,
could see, just from my perspective as somebody applying for the job. And there was just this long gap. And then you did the video where you described what had happened. Is that how it actually happened? Because the sequence of events, like what you were saying, and like you've said, it just didn't seem like it was going to happen that quick. So, yeah, what was that series of events like?
the first thing I can remember right now is going back to Adriana. It's actually really funny because then my dad passed away on February 26th, and so on that day, actually, I had my flights booked to go back to Bangkok, because my mom was like, that last week it was really quick, so she was like, you probably should come back. And I tried to book the quickest flight I could, but because of COVID, Thailand still had some COVID regulations. I had to wait to get I think it was like a permission. I was waiting for a few days for them to give me like this letter of permission that I could go in. And so I couldn't just book a flight the next day, so I had to wait a few days. And so February 26th was my flight. And so then I went back, and then, the funeral, we were arranging for the funeral. And Adriana actually emailed me back because I hadn't told her. And she was like, so Tan, are we going to have another interview? I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened. Just give me a second chance or something. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. My dad passed away. And I hadn't told her that. I think I messaged a few people, maybe Adriana and I'm not sure, maybe Anmol or something like that, to tell them that we had to sort of extend the process a little bit, because I had to be at this funeral and I needed some time to be with my family and to grieve and stuff like that.
Mm. So that's interesting because, you have a public image and being on YouTube and presenting yourself in video format. And this is something that, when life happens, that's part of the, that's part of your job, is to continue to make content.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that I was wondering about was, did you take a break from YouTube, or did you already have content lined up? Because I know you're very good at scheduling things out and having things ready to go.
Yeah, I think that's a really like useful question to discuss, for maybe if there's somebody out there in your audience that, wonders how this happens. How do you handle this kind of, I didn't have any content prepared, but in my situation, so my dad was diagnosed at the end of 2020 that he had cancer. So he was fighting through it the whole of 2021. So in 2021, the whole year, he was going through chemo, he was getting surgery. And so for that entire year, I think my content was already sort of all over the place, I would say. There were a few content where, I mean, most of it was like, okay, on task, I made Gene Key videos, I made this and that, but then there was some content in there where I was just really like like I just wanted to share, and I think I linked a lot of it to certain transits that was happening. Because I know I made a video about Pluto moon transit, and there was a Pluto retrograde musing transit, and all of these were kind of the way that I shared what was happening to me in the way that at that time, under a lot of stress and anxiety, I understood why it was happening from this celestial perspective, I guess. And I think it would be because I think, a part of me is telling me that it would be really hard to accept that these things are happening if it wasn't for the stars, if the stars hadn't planned or hadn't had something destined for. But and yeah, it was sort of um there was some truth in that, of course, because I was going through a Pluto moon transit and there was Pluto retrograde happening during those times. But yeah, just yeah, I'm also aware that, it's not just the planets, that sometimes these things also happen. So yeah, I think it's different for everybody, but I think like, because yeah, after the funeral I came back and I didn't really have any content prepared, but I was ready to get back and make YouTube videos because I had that whole year of 2021 of already sort of the shock. So it wasn't like he passed away. I was shocked. I needed a lot of time to grieve, but the whole of 2021 was just a shock year already, an anxious year already. So there was this, after he passed away, it was more, for me, it was a little bit more of like, how am I going to move forward with my life and redefine myself and redefine my channel or my work and things like that. And 2021, before he passed, was that year of anxiety of like talking and sharing. And yeah, and I think just being honest about I guess when I wasn't ready to be on task, and just making a video and saying I'm not ready to be on task. You may not expect this video, but this is the state, the emotional state that I'm in, and I just have to share that. And somehow that's very healing for me in a sense.
Wow, yeah. It's something interesting about working in astrology is that your art is very informed by the archetypes as they arise or transits as they happen. And what you're producing can show the archetype. And so it can be a very kind of like, I guess, tangential message that you're sending. You don't even you're not even attempting to say Moon Pluto is very intensely emotional and deeply passionate. It's like it's happening. so
Yeah,
so
yeah,
sometimes it's
yeah.
just like, how do I look in this, as opposed to me being able to articulate and describe what's actually
Mm.
happening. Do you see that in your channel? Do you see the transformation having happened during that time period of your content was one way prior to this situation and now it's different?
I think, yeah, I think maybe it's not for everyone, but I think for some of us, you can't really hide your private life from your public world in a sense. And maybe it's also useful to share some of your private life to the public for your own healing, like for me. And within that, there is a transformation that definitely happens. And I think, when you lose a parent, you kind of lose innocence in a sense. That's sort of what I felt there, is that because when you have both parents, you are just, you feel safe and protected, and there's a part of you that just knows that you can just go back and be that little girl again. But then when you lose one or both parents, then one or parts of you or all of you just feels like, shit, this is reality. This is the fucking world. And I think within that, made me question a lot about, what do I want to do in this world? How do I want to contribute? Who do I want to be? And that questioning, made me also question like the kind of content that I was putting out on YouTube, in my astrology channel. And is that really how I would imagine myself, 10 years from now or 15 years from now? And just asking questions about, your life purpose in general. And in a way, yeah, that made me think a lot about going back to doing art, which is what I decided to do after my dad passed away. But I think it was also just a wrapping up process as well, because I was very devoted artist back in high school, but then my dad didn't want to send me to art school. He didn't think it was worth the money, and so I just rebelled against him. I was like, okay, fine, I'm not going to art school. And then after he passed away, I think subconsciously something inside me was saying, well, try it out. He's not here anymore. Kind of like that. You're free. And I did. And then I realized, oh, okay, maybe it's not really the path for me after that. And so when it comes to the content shift, it's like it's not just that it's shifting in my YouTube channel, but it's like that I'm trying to make other content in this search for what does my purpose really mean for me now that I'm facing the real world. I'm not a little child anymore, and so on and so forth. And so there was that, like this, the fool, the fool in a tarot card, and the fool finally gets the reality, and the fool's like, well, I can't be a fool anymore. It's kind of like that energy. And the fool tries to do things to feel like life is meaningful, but the fool doesn't really know what to do yet, because the fool has always been a fool. Not to say that it's good or bad or whatever. It's just this journey, the journey of the fool. And the tarot is the journey of the fool, all the different cards in the tarot. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And it kind of, before you mention the fool, because that's, a great example of, there's the fool, that's the first card, but then there's the fool, that's the 22nd card, and that's the learned fool. And another thing that was coming up is that um, there's a relationship between innocence and forgiveness. And we, of course, see that in the Gene Keys, and then also in just like the idea of Christ consciousness. And what I see there's an interesting relationship there, especially when you say, yeah, I tried after my dad passed to do the 2 years, and then you kind of get forgiveness for him not sending you to art school. It's like, okay, maybe that was a phase, and maybe it isn't something that I want to continue to do. So there's some forgiveness in that. There's forgiveness in us. I continue to return back to this "you sent me here to die" kind of abandonment. So
Mm.
there needs to be forgiveness in that too. And so yeah, that was something that was coming through for me, was that one.
Wow. Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay, so that was a message that came through to me. And this was one of the questions that I sent you too, about messages or lessons that maybe you feel like you want to share from this experience, whatever it may be. Because there's platitudes that people can say, but real experiences and seeing someone, how they go through such a transformational period, it's good to have that as an example. So anything that you want to share as far as lessons or messages?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. And I think one of the hardest lessons for me, and this is for everybody, I guess, if you're losing somebody that you really love, is how do you accept that? Is how do you let go of whatever it is that's going on in your mind that's telling you whatever it is it's telling, and to really accept, how do you let go of like trying to save them, or let go of, trying to do your best to make sure that they want to live, or that they stay alive, or whatever it is that you have to let go of, just to accept that this is what's happening. That's really, really hard. And there's really no way to say like how to do that. I mean, there's no correct path to that. But I think just the word like acceptance itself is very powerful. And, if we could remind ourselves that every day, I think we're on the right path to really be able to accept. And a lot of this acceptance, I think, has to do with your emotions too. And when we don't accept our emotions, we do stuff. We travel, we drink, we buy more stuff, we try to make money, we become overly ambitious, and that can go on for a certain amount of time, but it can't last forever. And at one point you're going to come back, and you're going to have to face that I have to I have to feel. And the hardest part, like with losing like a parent or somebody that you love, like a family member, is that this grief, it doesn't go away. And that's something that you really have to accept, is that like 20 years from now, I would still feel it. Because like I talk to, of course, people who have lost their parents, and they're in their 60s, and they've lost their parent when they were 30, and now it's been 30 years, and they still cry when they talk about how that's happened. When they have a dream about their parent, they still cry. There's just really that, something there, like an umbilical cord, like a metaphorical umbilical cord that's really been cut, and that's just so painful. It just, it cuts you right into your heart and to the soul of your being in so many ways, and you're gonna feel that for the rest of your life. How do you accept that? That's so hard, and it's so painful to think about it. But yeah, you just have to be gentle with yourself and caress your heart and breathe, and yeah, and your mind just has to accept. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I'm still not, fully in that state where I can really accept. But sometimes I feel like I can, and sometimes it's like I can't. But I think it's also a process. And I think another lesson is also the other parent. Like if you lose one parent, the other parent is in so much shit. If they've been together like my parents were, and they were, they're still married, they still have like a habit, a routine together. The one that's still living is in so much pain than the child, because yeah, the child eventually grows up and they have their own family, but that other parent, that was their, the last person that they want to be with when they have to leave this earth, and that person has left. So taking care of that parent and yeah, being there for them, understanding them, giving them love, making sure that they're well, they're going to have their own healing process, but just kind of like reminding them to make sure that to heal, because like my mom is just really wants to escape the healing process, as I told you before. But yeah, she can't escape it. She comes back at the end of the day after she's been traveling for so many months, and she's there, and all these emotions come up out of nowhere, of course, because you were trying to run away from it. And having two other child, me and my sister, that she can kind of talk to, that understand her, that knew her husband, that's also really important, is making sure that like you're connecting with the person that knew this person that's passed away. There's something there versus connecting with people who didn't know that person that passed away. There's just something, there's like a memory that you can share, something that can really help you to heal together. So yeah, I think that would be like some of the lessons there.
Yeah. The feeling it to heal it. You got to feel it to heal it comes to mind.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what everyone really tries to avoid doing. And when the person is no longer here in the physical form, it feels easier. It's like out of sight, out of mind. This won't be something that's bubbling up underneath the surface. And it's just something that the person might not be aware of. And so then, you know, other parts of their life can be impacted because they're trying to repress it and not see it and not feel it. And like you said, it's going to come back every year, especially if there were traditions that you took together yearly or however periodically. Those kinds of events really bring these feelings back to the surface. And so that's why this time of year can be really painful for people. Is it's a time of year that we all are going inward and feeling more isolated. And so we're kind of there with our past, our future. We're there with other times and not necessarily in a different space. So you've also talked about acceptance. And so that's kind of where this one is going, is what does it feel like now to acknowledge that your father is no longer here in the physical world? And what does that mean for you in terms of the relationship that you have with him?
Yeah. It's actually kind of a weird feeling, because it's like you remember their voice, you remember how they look like, you remember what your interactions would be, but you can't call them on the phone and actually hear the voice in the present. You can't actually reach out and touch them and feel them anymore. But sometimes the memory is still so fresh. And so I think it's sort of like, it's a really weird feeling, but I think that there's also a lot of things to be said about the realm of the spirit, and how you can devote yourself to the realm of the spirit to connect with them in that sense, especially through dreams and stuff, which I have a lot of dreams about my dad. And obviously, like, some of the dreams, he's just so fresh and clear that, he's trying to tell me something, or he's trying to send me certain messages. And yeah, which, it's kind of beautiful in its own way, because you just kind of realize that he's there somewhere, at the end of the horizon, in the sky, or wherever you might want to be. And sometimes he wants to connect, and sometimes he wants to have his own life as well. Yeah, and I had this dream, I guess maybe I told you before, of like, he was giving me, like, in the dream, he was like going out for a drive, and I said, don't go out for a drive because it's raining. And he says, it's okay. Come take a walk with me. And then we went for a walk in the rain, and then he gave me some red flowers from like a bush or something. And then so that was a dream. And then a few days later in my garden, there were these red poppies, and they had never been there before, and somehow they just started growing everywhere. So it's like a little, and my dad loved to garden, and so maybe these are just kind of the things that's coming through from him. And since we moved here to Amsterdam, this new house, there's this bush of camellia. So it's called, is camellia, like the winter rose. And of course they're red. And when we first arrived, it's like, wow, these beautiful red camellias in these bushes. And I'm reminded again of that dream that I had. So maybe there's, this kind of connection. I just recently had a dream again where he was, where we were like moving houses or something, and we had to take some kind of plant with us. It had a name. It was a Thai plant, but yeah, there's just these. I don't know, there's like a plant spirit, my dad's spirit, something kind of coming through in that sense. But I think it's fun to kind of get curious about this, and to believe that that there is a message that sometimes the other realms want to send to us. And it's kind of just my relationship with him now is in this playful space, this space where like you can, maybe something is, maybe you're bored or something like that, but then you have this dream and it's like, oh, it gives you something to think about. And maybe he's there to entertain sometimes. He was also quite an entertainer. My dad was quite a funny person. And so in these dreams, he would, say these weird things and give these weird plans and stuff. So he's still there in a sense.
And I love that the gardening, I also feel like plants have a spirit on their own, but I love the idea of, our relatives even visiting back with us, our ancestors visiting back with us through those living entities that very clearly call to us. And
Yeah.
it seems like a really nice, easy way to get in touch with the physical realm. So I'm going to keep that in mind once I move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just realized that these two flowers that I was talking about too, like the poppy is I think it's supposed to be like also like a flower of remembrance, because they would use it in the soldiers at war.
Yeah.
And then these camellias that are now in our garden, I also read about them, and they were supposed to be representative of like Japanese samurais or something, because sometimes when the samurais like cut off the heads of whoever they're trying to kill, they fall off kind of like these camellias. And so there's this association with like death and remembrance with these two red flowers in some ways.
Wow. Yeah, naturally, right? These are those kinds of things you have no control over. It's like
Yeah.
somehow they end up on your path. Um, okay, so those are some things that kind of remind you of your father, and then perhaps ways in which your father is probably trying to reach you. And
Yeah.
so I wonder then what brings you comfort, if anything, on the days that are extra overwhelming.
Well, yeah, there are days. Yeah. Well, they're not really days for me. I think they're just like moments where like these emotions will just come out of nowhere, and about my dad. And the thing that brings me the most comfort, I would say, is having somebody there for me, like my boyfriend, Aryan, to be there to give a hug or like a physical touch, and somebody that, yeah, because Aryan also knew my dad, and they were on very good terms. They had a lot of good conversations together, and he was there that last month when I was with him, and he did this thing where he made like a little interview with my dad. So he had like this voice recording. It's the phone. So he would ask my dad about his life. And there were like different days. I think it was a 5-day interview. It was like an hour a day because my dad was also tired. So every day would be like a period of his life that he was sort of interviewing. And then my dad would just talk about his life for like that week. And he would record this voice recording. And they build a relationship there. And so, having Aryan there and then Aryan here with me, who knew my dad, who understood what I was going through, who understood what our family was going through, because I don't have my mom here, I don't have my sister here, but like I have Aryan to be physically here and also was physically there. And when I'm getting these emotions, that he really understood what I'm feeling, because he was there to see how I was taking care of my dad in that last month. He understood my dad's life story. He understood the relationship that we had. of course, my mom knows this and my sister knows this, but they're just not there physically with me. So for me, like having somebody physically, like physical comfort is very important for me. Is having somebody there that understands that emotional connection, understands the story, and can kind of physically be here. I think that brings me a lot of comfort. So that's one thing. And I think another thing which I've sort of been getting into, yeah, this is not, maybe it's not really comfort, but I think it's maybe like a long-term comfort, is like to really understand my ancestors and just to go deep in the family line. So of course there's my dad, there's also my uncle, who passed away. I had two uncles that also passed away. And then my grandparents, and then great grandparents, and then whoever was there before that. Having this deep rooted connection with the family line, with the generations before, with the whole like ancestral lineage is something that has been bringing me comfort as well, I think. And in the long term, it will be a little bit more like this solid sense of feeling of like, yeah, like it's happened. There's people in the family, they've passed away. There's new people.
That's like really archetypally rich too, that um, we seek the acceptance of our father, and then it's the container, that kind of like maternal roots that are providing comfort and consoling, and yeah, there's something
Mm,
very beautiful about that image of your whole
mm,
family like
mm.
gathered around you as you mourn the loss of your father, and really explore what that means for identity and legacy.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that word that you brought up, legacy. Because I think that's all that also does bring that sense of comfort. Is knowing like the work that he's done and what he's left behind for other people. Because my dad was a very public person. He worked at the embassy. He was a consul general of Malaysia, and so he worked a lot with the local people, the local communities. Everybody, a lot of people in Malaysia knew him, and so knowing that he's left something there, and that in his at his funeral, yeah, like a
Farewell.
eulogy book, these people that were impacted by his work also wrote in the book. So yeah, there's the family, and then there's also the community that he's impacted and how he's left a legacy there. And also understanding the legacy of like my grandfather who's passed away, and what he's left behind. And because when my grandfather died, there was also like a lot of people at the funeral, because he worked for the government. And in my father's funeral, the government also, I think it was the government, it was like the Thai royal palace, they would offer, I don't know the word, but like a parade, sort of like um a kind of parade to honor somebody who has worked for the government. So the princess would kind of bless this parade, and so feeling like, yeah, like he's really done something that has left something in people's hearts or changed people's lives in some ways, that brings a lot of comfort too.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, in those kinds of ways, through legacy is how our spirit lives on in the physical realm. So we can
Mm,
always have a relationship with spiritual on our own, but when someone impacts so many people, their spirit lives on through all those people. And so, yeah, all
yeah,
those stories,
yeah,
they continue his legacy that way too.
yeah.
Ah, well, I'm feeling like a lot of good energy actually from this. Like my shoulders are kind of like vibrating because it's actually more uplifting than I expected to feel after talking about something so deep and personal. And so, yeah, I appreciate everything that you shared, and for offering guidance for people that are, we're all going to experience it unless we go before our
Mm,
parents. And so, and
mm.
even still, we experience loss um, in many ways. So just having this to reflect on is beautiful. And I wonder if there's anything else that you would have, if you want to offer for those in a similar situation for navigating this time, if there's anything else in addition to what you've already given to us today.
Like you said, there is a lot of uplifting energy when you do think about, because when somebody kind of dies, you just remember kind of the good things. I mean, you do remember the bad things, but and there's a lot of of course, there's a lot of bad things that's happening. Well, I wouldn't say bad, they were bad, they were like traumatizing. Say there's lots of traumatizing things that would happen in your childhood because of the way that your parents were. But I think the universe somehow finds a way for you to sort of reconcile and to sort of forgive each other. Maybe without you even knowing it, but if you're open to it, that would happen, before the person passes away, just as a way of balancing off things in nature. If and if it doesn't happen before they pass away, then giving yourself that space to do that, even when they're gone, like maybe having an altar or finding a way that you can open yourself up to receive their connection, which is something that, a lot of us think it's supernatural, but we're all very intuitive and we can all do this. If we're just open to it, we can all connect with the spirits in that way. But yeah, whichever way it is for you, like, is it like, does the universe give you a chance to reconcile things before the death, or is it after the death? But like, having that space where you can really forgive and let each other know that there is love there, I think that that's the most important thing. um yeah, and like, for me was, I think, mid 2020 was when I really forgave my dad for everything, because I was spending a lot of time with him around May of 2020, and I really forgave him. And I made a video on my channel to say that I've forgiven my dad. And then at the end of that year, he's diagnosed with cancer. Like, what the fuck, right? Like, the universe just does that to you. And I didn't know what was going to happen. We don't know that, why the universe is doing this. Why is this happening right now? But, if you really listen, I think that there was a message for me that you're going to lose your father like 2 or 3 years before I actually lost him. And just being open to what you have to go through to forgive this person is so important, because at the end of the day, you don't want anything to be left there, you know. So um then there's just the memories, and memories can also be hard when you're missing somebody and they're not there physically. But yeah, that's when you have things that can comfort you. For me, it was like having somebody physically there for me. But I think, yeah, I think a really important thing that I do want to share here as well, this is maybe the last thing, is to celebrate their life and celebrate that they're on a different journey. Um, kind of like saying goodbye, having a goodbye party in a sense, so that they can live on in a new journey wherever they may be. And maybe they're going to visit you from time to time, but they have another journey right now. And, it's the end of the physical life, but it's not the end of the soul. So celebrating where the soul has to go from this point. Yeah.
Yeah, the mystery of the beyond. Um,
Yes.
well, that's beautiful. And yeah, I just really appreciate the insights that you've shared today and the love that you've shared with us too, because that's really powerful. Um, being so strong through all of it. And yeah, I'm always very impressed by you as a person, but just watching you go through this whole process has been um, definitely the reason I wanted to provide this to people, is you continue to develop that relationship with your father. And I really love that. And I think it's really beautiful. So thank you, Tan.
Thank you, Sarah, for having this space for me to get things out through my voice and share with your community.
Thank you all for joining us.
Bye.